I'm a graduate of Fern Creek High School, and graduated in 1972. Graduate of University of Louisville, 1975. Got my master's degree at U of L. I went right into education. I taught at the public school level, and then at the private school for the last 25 years. I was the administrator of Evangel Christian School, and I've also served as the mission director for Evangel. It's a large ministry in Louisville. And so when the earthquake occurred, I was on a mission. I was in Turkey, and I just felt a prompting to head to Nepal, and I've been there two other years, to lead medical teams up in the mountains. And so I was familiar with it, and we have assisted with earthquake relief on 4 other occasions. One in China in 2006, 100,000 died in that earthquake, and we brought food up into the mountains and other assistance, and also 3 separate trips to Haiti. We were the first to be on a commercial flight into Haiti after the earthquake, so I was somewhat familiar with that, the process, and so I arrived, as I said, just under 3 days from when the earthquake hit on April 25th.
Tell me about some of the things that you saw when you first got there.
Well, first of all, many of the roads were blocked off, and I guess the most frightening thing to me, when you see electric wires on the ground, you think there's no way we should pass near that. Well, in this case, you saw tens of thousands of wires down. And so I was a little uncomfortable moving around the city. I was impressed with how the people of Nepal worked together to try to rescue and uncover the much debris in the area. I was stunned by the leaning buildings. And what happens in this case, you have so many that have come down completely, and so you just see a mound of rubble. But then you see many that have cracks and are just leaning a little bit. And after a while, day after day, you just kind of forget that they are there. And so the realization hit me hard the other day. I walked past one. I was on a sidewalk, and I went to a location. 2 days later, I came back, and I could not pass through that. The building had completely come onto the sidewalk, and so had I been there, I would have been killed. So that's something, these buildings are just ready to come down. I would say another thing you observe is that it seems like 25% of the buildings are either destroyed or need to be demolished. Another thing I noticed when I arrived is the people out in the streets. As I said, I've been to Nepal before and never seen so many people on the streets. And I understood after talking to different ones, they were afraid to go back into their homes. They had enough sense to know if my home has numerous cracks in it, it's not safe to be there. So fields are just flooded with people with makeshift tents and tarps, and they're lying on the, on sidewalk area and everywhere at night. So, and I've noticed quickly, like for example, on my flight was an early flight for rescue teams. Not many were here at all. But now the teams, I believe there's 20 nations represented with rescue and relief teams, and so they are doing an excellent job. And let me just say, so proud of the United States because we stand tall there with our people. You see them on the street, so prevalent here. And I witnessed the rescue of 2 people after 5 days, which was extraordinary. and a group from Los Angeles. They were leading the way with that. And what happened, they were walking past a building, and again, 5 days, and they heard the noise of a man. And so they started trying to dig him out, which is a frightening operation, because where they're going under, the building can collapse more. So people really are at risk doing that. And so the crowd gathered and got larger and larger, and, the rumor spread someone's alive. And after seeing so much death, it became just a very exciting moment. So when they pulled him out and then put him on a stretcher, it was just a beautiful thing. The crowd erupted in applause, and then a second one was rescued, and it was an exciting day.
Are they still rescuing people from the rubble, or is it been so long? Most are, I believe, presumed dead now because of the length of time, but we still have hope. But I will say this is what is troubling to me as a parent, and I have 4 sons, and is to walk by. If I walk from here where I am now across town, I will pass perhaps 100 to 200 mounds of rubble, maybe more. In each of those, it's filled with bodies that haven't been taken out. So as a parent, if you can imagine walking by these and knowing my children or my mother is under there, it's just an overwhelming thing emotionally, and that is everywhere. And I'll give you an example. There is a tower that was the largest tower in Kathmandu, and it was an observation deck, but it was an iconic building, and it was very similar to the Eiffel Tower for Paris, or the Statue of Liberty for the U.S. And so this tower you would see in postcards. Well, anyway, when the earthquake occurred on Saturday, just before noon, there were 250 people on top of that tower or inside of it. The tower came down almost totally. And out of those, they recovered 40 bodies. So one person out of 250 survived that fall. So there are 209 people in that big pile of rubble which I've passed. And that is the story all over the city, that they just do not have the equipment to uncover the remains. It's just not there, and it's the task is just too big by hand. And when I say rubble, some of the rubble is 3 stories high. So, and something else, as a Christian, we in the United States, most of us worship on Sunday. They worship here on Saturday, and this occurred right when the churches were in service, the middle of their service. So I was at a location today where there were 75 people worshiping on the 7th floor of a 7th-floor building, and most everything under them was clear. People were out shopping or doing whatever for the day. Saturday is their holiday. But this group of worshipers on the 7th floor, so when the building came down, fortunately, 45 survived, injured, 30 died. But that is common in many of the churches throughout the city. Christianity is a minority, but nevertheless, it was a very tragic thing for those going to church that day. And you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but is that mostly because, I've heard that we could have similar earthquakes in the United States, but it wouldn't affect us as much because our buildings are built to code and they're stronger and that kind of thing. Is it a situation like that where some of the buildings just maybe weren't constructed at with some of the specifications that we would have here, some of the requirements, or is it just that the earthquake was so big that it doesn't matter where it would hit, it would have?
Well, that's a good question, but what I have found is the modern buildings here, most of those stood tall. You can look at a street and see 4 or 5 buildings that look untouched, and right next to them will be these big pile of rubble. What was explained to me is the old construction, they use this type of brick that is made of clay, and from the outside it looks like a strong brick, but if you throw it down, it turns into sand or powder. And so that's what happened. Many of these buildings were built with that type of brick, so when they came down from the top, it just a domino effect. But it amazes me to look at streets where you see some buildings without even a crack. I've been working in a hospital almost every day, bringing food to families and ministering to patients. And the hospital is probably 9-10 stories, and it's frightening just to look on the outside. You have cracks throughout the structure. I'm hoping the foundation is good, but the facade is terrible, and yet they're continuing to operate there as a full-service hospital, and the need is great. The hallways have been full of victims, and I've worked with mainly the earthquake victims, and it's just heartbreaking. There's a lady there that's just an example, just grieving, and she's in pain. Her leg's broken, her arm's broken, but she's also lost a son. And so the emotional toll on her. I've been working also with a little girl whose parents cannot even afford to come visit their daughter. They lived in a remote area, and she has fractures in the bottom of her back. She just had surgery, and I've been with her almost every day. Another lady was grieving that yesterday, and she had lost her son and husband. So when they lose family members, they've also lost their home. So it is quite overwhelming, and the average income here is about $1,500 U.S. equivalent per year. So they're very, very poor people. So to start over is just a huge challenge for them.
What do you say to that woman who lost her son, or the family member who's lost everything in this? How do you console them?
Oh my, I have an interpreter that travels with me, and some of these, I would say 20% do know English, but the interpreter helps me there. And what I do is I reach out and I touch them. I give them a hug. I shake their hand, and I show with my expression how deeply sorry I am, and have the interpreter to help me. And that's about all we can do. But we can do more. If you give them something while you're doing that, I believe that is a comfort. You present them food, you present them money. It's just a little ray of hope that somebody I don't even know is trying to bless my life. And so that's part of what I feel I need to do while I'm here, and I'm trying to do is just be a light in this dark time for them. But it's hard to know what to say. But the Bible speaks of when you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to the Lord. Or if you give a cup of water, it's as doing it unto the Lord. And I think it's that same principle. We don't know these people. We're not necessarily trying to convert, but we're trying to love them and be a light and encouragement to them.
You've mentioned, or at least I've seen a lot of news reports that say that in the days following since the earthquake, there have been a number of aftershocks.
Yes.
Have you experienced those? And
oh, yes.
What has been your experience with that?
Well, I got out of bed because I thought somebody had broken into my room. It so scared me. It was just the beds were moving, and there was cracking noise all around me. I guess that was the most frightening one. But there's been probably, while I've been here, 3 or 4, 5 that you can just feel it trembling, and nothing serious. But where they are of concern are for the buildings that are unstable and already in very poor condition. That's where you could set them off. And thankfully, not a lot of people are in those buildings. They're using wisdom, but they are continuing to walk right by the buildings. And I think with the idea, well, they're going to come straight down to the bottom, but that's not always the case. As what I told you before, sometimes they go sideways, and that's a significant concern.
When was the last or aftershock that you felt?
Oh, yesterday I felt one, and a lady. I didn't feel it much, but a lady spoke to me. She said, "Did you feel that? Did you feel that?" So it was in the afternoon yesterday.
Okay. And what do they need? Let's say there's somebody here in the United States who wants to help. What can they do?
Well, I think on the ground level, a great amount of food has been brought in. And in fact, I think that is the challenge. Our group from Louisville is taking just tons of this up into the mountains where a lot of aid has not reached those areas, and they're devastated. And so I would say here the food is good, and they're just bringing, these transport planes are bringing in tons and tons of food, and they certainly need that. But I think they also need money, because if you look at the long term, they're going to have to rebuild. They're going to have to find a place to rent. They're going to have to get strong tents if they're going to endure months like this instead of a tarp. And so I wish I had more money to hand out. And honestly, I've handed out so much because it's one of those situations you see the needs, and how do you say no? They're everywhere. And you just want to bless them. Money works. And they know more than we know what they need. And that money does buy them necessities. They know the stores to go to, and there's many stores that are open that sell the items cheaper than we would find them. So I think people that send in money to these organizations are doing a good thing. They need money. And of course they need, for the long term, the infrastructure is just going to, it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take years to reestablish these communities. And hopefully they build them with modern security techniques that they'll be more stable. Because this is, of course, an earthquake-prone area. In the 1990s, they had a very large one here.
Are you I guess satisfied probably isn't the right word, but are you satisfied with maybe the amount of attention that this is getting? Are people maybe in the United States or elsewhere, do they really understand what's going on there? Or, I mean, is it kind of, are people...
I believe, okay, I've not been in the United States since this has happened, so I can't say I haven't seen news from the United States. But from what I can see from our church, the response was terrific, and they rallied together, and they're bringing money in here to Nepal. The team will be here tomorrow morning, and have brought in, and I don't know the exact figure. I know it's over $20,000, but I was very thankful for that. So I do think people in the United States has this sense of the great need. And hopefully they will contribute. This is a time to step up to the plate. And I believe the U.S., more than any other country, and I'll say except Israel I've seen in these disasters step up very tall and are quick to be there and quick to set up hospitals. But the United States, I would say they stand the tallest as far as bringing in aid and equipment that's needed. And that's one of the things, let me say, Travis, that there is not enough equipment here. I have been all around the city in depth, and I have seen perhaps 8, 10 large pieces of equipment being used to move the debris. But in the United States, had that happened in Louisville, we would have hundreds and hundreds of pieces, perhaps thousands. And so they're just short of equipment. And that's going to take time to bring that in from mainland China or India or wherever they can bring those large pieces in to move the bulldozers they need, the backhoes and things like that. They just don't have enough. And the airport is woefully inadequate, one runway. And so to get all these in a space for 9 planes, smaller planes, it has space for some larger, but it's just not used to the traffic that will be required to come in and bring all the aid. It's just not big enough. But they're doing well. They're pushing some domestic flights back, and I've heard stories where the planes sometimes circle for hours and then have to go to India to refuel, then return to Kathmandu and hope they can land. So that's good and bad. The good news is there's a lot of aid and rescue workers coming in.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to kind of ask you this question. You know, you in a sense are risking your life. You're going to a place to people you don't know, and you're doing all this hard work. Someone might look at that and say, you know, why are you doing it? Why would you risk your life and do something like this?
Well, I think it's what we should do. Again, it goes back to that philosophy, which is a scripture. When you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. And I think it doesn't matter who they are, if we do know them or do not. If there's a need, we try to help. And I think that's the spirit of America. Certainly the spirit of Christianity is to reach out and bless people you don't know. And it's a joy for me. You know, I come home or to my hotel, and I just feel energized every day in the afternoons when I come in after a long day. And it's just, thank you, Lord, for my family that's alive in America. Thank you for this opportunity to serve. It truly is a joy.